Now, before I get into this video, I want it to be very clear. I'm not talking about what I want to see. I'm speculating here, not talking about like a wish list. Because again, I've done plenty of videos on wish lists. I've talked about in the past what I want from this game. I don't think that's a very interesting conversation. I want to talk about what seems most likely. I want to speculate and get closer and closer to the actual roster. Now, with that out of the way, there is a lot of Jump Force stuff happening over the next 7 days. So like everyone, I've been speculating about that final roster, and one thing that I always come back to is the Naruto roster. I seriously don't know what's going to happen with that roster. The old assumption was that it would pretty obviously be Sakura, Kakashi, and Madara, and then some random fourth character. At least that was the consensus among the community. However, since the Mami Koyama update on her profile, which includes 2 new roles in Jump Force, I think it's pretty reasonable to assume at least one of those roles is Kaguya, one of her most notable characters that she's played recently. And even though Madara is very popular, I feel like Kaguya is going to end up taking that slot from him. I suppose they could do Madara and Kaguya in the same game, but based on the way that Kaguya works, I don't think that that would happen. It's very difficult to have this conversation without spoiling Shippuden, so I'm going to try my best, but unless half of the Jump Force story contains Madara and then at some point Kaguya replaces Madara, I don't see them using both characters simultaneously in the same game. So I do think that that slot belongs to Kaguya. Kaguya seems like the obvious pick there, at least given the evidence in front of us. Sakura, I feel like is almost a shoo-in. She feels pretty obvious. And Kakashi, I really don't know how to feel about, to be honest. I try to keep the story of Jump Force in mind as much as possible when I think about the roster, and I'm not sure how Kakashi would fit in. I'm not saying it's impossible, but a role doesn't really jump out for him. You wouldn't want to use him as the leader of the Naruto faction because it undermines Naruto himself, and you wouldn't want to use Naruto as the leader with Kakashi in the same game because it undermines Kakashi despite the fact that Kakashi's the leader of Team 7. So either way, you're stuck between a rock and a hard place if you have Kakashi in the same story as Naruto because it makes one of them feel less important. But even outside of all that speculation about the Naruto roster, the additional, more complicated part of this comes in, which is Boruto Uzumaki. If it wasn't for the Naruto roster, Boruto would feel like a very obvious pick for the base roster. In fact, I would say that he's just as obvious as Asta or Deku. Shueisha often uses Deku, Asta, and Boruto all in the same piece of marketing for Weekly Shonen Jump. Sure, you see a lot of disdain for Boruto on the internet, but the series is obviously popular. Shueisha isn't dumb. They wouldn't use a character like Boruto so heavily in their marketing if he wasn't popular or if the series wasn't succeeding. Heck, you can even look at the Western numbers for Crunchyroll and you'll see that Boruto is one of the biggest series of 2018. That being said, Shueisha has publicly said that Boruto isn't doing as well as they would have liked. I've always been cautious to talk about Boruto as far as the Jump Force roster is concerned though, because of one very important thing. I feel like it would be very strange to see Boruto and Naruto interact with each other on the same screen. After all, Naruto is wearing his Shippuden gear. But I put some thought into it recently because I was thinking about the roster, like I've been doing a lot, and I think most of us would be fine seeing a character like Goku in Jump Force, which is basically his Dragon Ball Super design, interact with Teen Gohan, despite the fact that, of course, that doesn't really work, right? But the reason we would be okay with that is because Goku hasn't really visually changed a lot between Dragon Ball Z and Dragon Ball Super. Naruto, on the other hand, has dramatically changed between Shippuden and Boruto. And in Jump Force, Naruto is clearly rocking his teenage design. But as long as the story treats Naruto and Sasuke as adults, despite the fact that their arms are fully intact, I think I would pretty easily be able to ignore the fact that Boruto, as a child, is interacting with Naruto with his Shippuden design. Because if the story treats him like an adult, I will treat him like an adult. I've heard some people say things, well, they could just treat Boruto like an alternate universe or an alternate timeline. And I do think they could treat it like an alternate timeline, like, oh, we got him from the future or something like that. But they certainly couldn't treat it like an alternate universe, because then a very important question comes into play, which is Naruto canon? Is Boruto canon? Which one is canon, right? So if we somehow navigate our way past that kind of strange situation with Naruto being a teenager and his child being on the same screen, if we do manage to get past that and we assume that Boruto is in the game, would he count as his own series, or would he take up a slot from a Naruto character? And when I think about it, the only conclusion I can come to is that, in fact, a Boruto character would indeed take a slot from a Naruto character. Because that just seems like the most obvious explanation to the question of why have they chosen not to announce Naruto characters yet? The last time we heard about a Naruto character in Jump Force was 7 months ago, when they initially announced the game. Obviously, we know literally every other franchise has had additional characters since then. other than, of course, Death Note, but Death Note doesn't even have playable characters, so they don't count. Regardless of whether Boruto is in the game or not, I do think there's something special going on with the Naruto roster. I do think there's a reason we haven't heard about the characters. One might be that they just have less characters than the other big three. One could be that they're Boruto characters. I just think that there is something strange going on with the Naruto roster. I don't know what it is, but I think there's something weird going on. I do think the best theory is that it's a Boruto character, or that maybe even multiple Boruto characters, but I'm really not confident when I say that because it is very difficult to predict the remaining Naruto roster. So let's assume for 1 second that it is Boruto. Well, let's return to our Naruto predictions. I still think Kaguya is a shoo-in regardless of whatever the rest of the roster looks like. So let's just assume Kaguya, but if Boruto characters happen, I could see it being any of these combinations. Kaguya, Boruto, Sarada, and Mitsuki. I know that's a lot of Boruto reps, but I do think it's actually a possibility. And then we've got a second option, Kaguya, Boruto, Sarada, and Sakura. Again, I don't think this one will happen either. I think the last one on this list is actually the most likely out of all of these, and I know all of this sounds really weird. It's not the Naruto roster you were initially predicting, and perhaps maybe it's still not, but I still think that this is pretty strong possibility, assuming that we get Boruto characters. Kaguya, Boruto, Sakura, and Hinata. Now I know none of those characters are necessarily on anyone's prediction list right now, but the reason I think that that's actually possible is because they could also add Sarada as DLC. And then you would have the parent and child combinations. Obviously, you've got Naruto, Hinata, and Boruto. You've got Sakura, Sasuke, and Sarada. So that would be your Naruto roster. After DLC, of course. Another option is that they could just do a pretty normal Naruto roster, kind of like what we were predicting before with Kaguya, Kakashi, Sakura, and then just one Boruto character being Boruto. But I'm not sure how likely that is considering how long it's taken us to get any Naruto character news. And again, I mentioned it slightly earlier on in this video, but there's also the possibility that Naruto just doesn't have the same number of characters as the other big three rosters, but I don't believe that. Now, again, this is very different to what anyone in the community is predicting right now, and I'm not even saying that this is my prediction. Because if you've been paying attention to my prediction list, you know that my lists are very different from this. But that's because Boruto would change the situation quite a bit. I don't think just Boruto would come, especially post-DLC. And if it was just Boruto, what would the rest of the roster look like? Would it be Kaguya, Boruto, and then what? Do you just fit in popular characters? No, I don't think so. I think you have some level of sense being made with the rest of the roster. And I think the best way to do that would be to pair up either the children of Boruto or the parents and the children. So yeah, of course I'm going to modify my predictions a lot. Again, I'm not sure about this. I'm just saying, if Boruto characters do happen, I do think this is one line that they could pretty easily take. I'll probably post an updated prediction list on Twitter, assuming Boruto characters. So if you're interested in that, perhaps come follow me on Twitter. Oh, one more thing. I didn't want to mention this in the core part of the video because I don't think it's really important to the argument, but Boruto does have his manga shoes in the creator character items. So if you're one of those people who think that that's good evidence for a character, well then, there you go. Alright then, thank you so much for watching this video. If you could leave a like, it helps other people find the video, of course. Subscribe to keep up to date with further speculation and news. My name has been Bilbsy, and I'll see you in the next video.